Game begin.
Welcome back to Spike Colony, where we're using new software to record the podcast. I'm here with my regular co-host, Michael J. Flores, and my irregular co-host, Landy Ho.
Hey there.
So this is now an Irish soda bread scone and popper and poker and hummus podcast, right? Like mostly a hummus podcast, I think.
Lan, have you enjoyed any hummus recently?
Recently, I did have some hummus from New York stalwart, I guess, Mamoon's. Do you guys remember Mamoon's?
Of course.
Yeah.
Mamoon's,
We said
Mamoon's,
of course simultaneously.
Yeah, Mamoon's got like many
It's like an institution.
college kids in New York. At the time, I think it was like $4 I think it was $4 for a shawarma sandwich.
Yeah, I think it was like $4. Yeah, and then I would get the hummus in there, so that was like an extra 50 cents or so.
I mean,
Yeah.
you could get a meat platter from Mamoon's, and sometimes you would just get some fatty meat, and that's tasty.
So
Yeah, that's the good stuff.
So I did have some hummus from Mamoon's recently. I was sad to see that the price had gone up. They added seats to one of the locations. I think in the East Village location, you have seats now, and everything is about like twice as expensive as it was before, which means it's
Late
still
stage capitalism. Am I right, man?
super cheap by current standards, but certainly not the $4 heaven that we used to enjoy. But it was good.
This is, inflation too, right?
Yeah, I mean, like, it's been fucking 15 years, right?
Yeah, I'm sure if it's a $7 falafel, it's roughly the same damage.
I got texted by David Raska yesterday, DRDR, advising me which Wegmans hummuses to eat and not eat based on their sugar content. So that's how you know this is now a hummus podcast. DRDR did not text me about, strategies on how to beat Enchantress. He was really...
It's because we can't. We can't.
If you're on the Wegmans hummus train, this is the ones to avoid.
All right. This has been a slow week in Premodern, I assume, for all three of it. Lan, were you at League on Thursday?
I was not. I basically have not. Ever since I played the playoffs, I have not played any Premodern.
So we haven't played... Mike and I haven't played Premodern in like a week. I had like a busy work week. And Mike is just playing Pauper.
The last one that we played, the hilarious thing was I played Replenish and SWB played Stompy, and Lanny, you played Devourer, right?
Yeah.
So we played all of Lan's 3-0 decks from last season, and if you added all of our wins together, we had three wins.
Yeah, we put 3 wins between us. Maybe 4, like not counting the bye.
Well, I got a bye, so
yeah.
So we had.
I got 1. I got
bye.
1, and did SWB get 2, or did he go 1?
No, he went 1 and 2. So
okay, so we got 3 between us.
we got 3. I got a bye, so I did have an additional win, but not an earned win. But Lan would have gotten with any one of our 3 decks, he would have gotten that many wins by himself. So
Yeah, look at what they have to do to mimic a fraction of our power.jpg.
It's like those old martial arts, like the Wuxia movies, where like the 3 heroes fight like the one like boss, like the old boss, and he fights them 3-on-1.
Yeah,
Basically, that was the case. Yeah,
you're like Kareem Abdul-Jabbar, and like me, SWB, and Lanny are like just the guys in pajamas in like one of the early levels of Game of Death.
Oh yeah. Like the guys who get credited as like Fighter 1, Friend 1.
Yeah,
we got
versus your
Ryan and I.
Cinder.
No.
My wife Ryan is part of the A24 club, and she got a free ticket to Naja 2, which was a Chinese animated film with like lots of stuff that a younger myself would enjoy, but the dub was really rough, and so that kind of hurt. And then the movie was also 2 hours long, but the animation was pretty cool.
Graham saw that and said that for a bajillion-dollar movie, that the subtitles were surprisingly bad. He noticed a few errors.
Yeah,
I have
the American port they didn't spend good time on.
I have 2 related comments, one for each of you. First, my sister is also a member of the A24 Club, and it was her birthday this week, so they gave her some sort of A24 swag as a
Yeah,
result
you
of...
get a box.
So she got like a $50 candle. She's like, it's a really nice candle. All right, so I guess she could select from whatever kind of swag that they were giving away for birthdays, and it's branded to some... I think, what's the one, Land? It's like 80s Power Rangers Buffy, but also trans. What's the name of that movie?
When I saw a TV glow?
Yep, it's a that movie candle she got, and then
The movie inside the movie.
yeah,
Pink Oblique.
yeah. So and then this past week I watched the third season of Squid Game with the English dub on with
Oh no!
no. So listen to this: the English dub on with a kid, and also with the subtitles on at the same time, and the subtitles and the English dub never agreed with each other to like a comical extent, right?
That's normal though. I think they're with the dub. They sometimes change the sentences to try to make the lip sync work, and then it still never works, right? And then sometimes the characters are singing, so then they have to translate the song lyrics into something that rhymes in English language.
That's just like...
Well, I was watching with a kid. He didn't want to, watch it in Korean.
It's just like listening to you and Lanny talk on Spy Colony anyway, right there.
Right, I'm the subtitles and Mike is the dub.
Yeah, and you guys just don't agree on anything, so...
Fair enough. Well, I think we should pick up with, I guess, Lan's reaction to the Sacred Torch Showdown. That's when you reached out to me saying that you could hop on the pod. So I assume that you had something to say about our lauded New York City tournament.
Oh, no. It was just because, that was right after the playoffs.
Oh, so you wanted to talk about the playoffs? Okay.
No, I could, right? But there was also another weird thing where a friend of mine pinged me and said that there was also a tournament in Madison, like a decent-sized one, where the finals was 2 mono black decks.
Yeah. We talked about that a little bit last week. Basically, none of the, decks that beat red decks, or none of the decks that beat black decks showed up. So black decks had, a great day.
And there was, no 12-12 at that tournament, right?
Yeah. People were just kind of chilling. I mean, half the field was black. I mean, not half, but, more than 20%, which is kind of crazy for a 2025 Premodern tournament.
Pretty crazy.
But yeah, four of the top 4, 100% of the top 4 being black is certainly something.
Yeah,
Yeah.
16,
It's crazy because
16 dark rituals.
You would think that with so many black decks, all of their snuff outs and vendettas would get turned off. But I guess one black deck has to win whenever there's a black deck.
Yeah, plus all the perishes and glooms and dystopias just rotting away in the sideboard.
Yeah, they're just doing nothing.
I did not realize how bad dark ritual effects were. I know Fran's always complaining about them, but I commentated the Spring Fling top 4 last night, and a cleric's deck had an explosive dark ritual double Priest of Gix into his whole hand, right? So into the 1/1 guy that searches for the 6/6 guy, and a Cabal Therapy on the first turn.
What a turn! You're
that was turn 1.
And a 1/1.
And at the end of the game, his opponent, who was playing, it was a red deck, won game 1 on 18, having done both points of damage to himself with fetch lands.
Yeah.
That is that's the dream draw for the cleric's deck. He didn't do a single point of damage.
Yeah, I think a Grim Lavamancer is the equivalent of 5 dark rituals.
It was
right?
just a Mog Fanatic took out the initial onslaught, and then they just never attacked. Game 2 was just a Grim Lavamancer. It was a best of 5, so sideboard removal didn't come in for Game 2. The Lavamancer hit on turn 1, and while he only won on around 12, the game was just never in doubt. You just took some hits while managing the battlefield with the Grim Lavamancer, but the Lavamancer never left the battlefield the whole game. And you can imagine a deck that is mostly 2/2s and 2/1s for 3, how that must be going against a first turn, Lava Man.
Yeah, so I have an initial reaction to this that is not related to the Cleric's deck, but is related to David Gleicher's Moneyball Black deck.
Why Moneyball?
He calls it Moneyball Black because it basically is comprised entirely of like guys that don't hit home runs but just get on base. I guess
That's a metaphorical and not at all explanatory description.
right. Yeah. So
Also, it does not espouse the principles of Moneyball. Just to be clear.
I mean, I guess he's just basically saying that these guys are like good for like
Nothing.
above replacement,
Oh.
right? Or
Like,
whatever. They're just like
can we call it like
they're-
6 out of 10 black? Like, is that
They're-
basically
yeah.
the?
they're like the guys who I mean they're the guys who like throw funny. That was like the thing. It's like the Oakland A's Moneyball and not the Red Sox Moneyball, right? It's like this is the best we could afford. We don't have a flooded strand budget. We've got like a basic swamp budget. So
Is this like when you get an 8th pick with the 12th pick in the pack, and you're like, oh my god? Oh,
yeah.
the
You're
Warpath
just
goal.
like hyped.
Yeah. Oh, okay.
Yeah, it's like when you get like a Wandering Emperor, pick 10 in cube, and you're already in white, and you're like, this might be in my deck.
You're like, white's wide open.
Yeah,
I'm in the right lane.
yeah.
So the team Slay Pillage Massacre, which was John Sonny and Scott McCord, and I think Gerard Fabiano was their third, was a team draft team, and their strategy was to take bad cards during Team Rochester. So they would take the best card and then take a bad card on the bounce back, because what they wanted to do was to have their opponents take like a lot of like 4 through 6s out of 10, and under the assumption that they would just fill their decks with 4 out of 10s. And they almost won the Pro Tour. So that maybe that should tell you something about having 4s out of 6s out of 10 when you can have 10s out of 10.
Well, you see, the difference between Rochester draft and constructed Magic is that you get to choose from the same pool of cards. So you could just only draft A pluses into your 6s out of only A pluses in your 75 of 75 cards. But I digress, because
that's a cool strategy, right? There's like, we want to flood them with playables, and they're just going to like have all these 67th percentile cards in their deck.
Yeah. 1 second. Answering a text message. Sorry to the listeners.
Is it from Mamdani?
Is Mamdani texting you?
He says, keep up the good work.
What does he think about Moneyball Black? Does he think the rent is too high on Parallax Tide?
He said that local economic conditions have led to people playing decks like Moneyball Black because they can't afford to play Enchantress or Elves.
Okay, fair enough.
Or Replenish.
So this is my counterpoint. So I'm actually kind of on board with the idea of this deck. So basically this is like Ritual Hippie, this is Duress Cabal Therapy, Nantuko Shade, which
That guy hits like a truck, to be fair.
Yeah, I actually think that Nantuko Shade is one of the more underrated cards that can be played in these black decks.
Well,
initially, I was just kind of like, oh, it just kind of dies to Lava Dart sometimes, or like
certainly
Engineered Plague.
Dies to Lava Dart, but like on a pound for pound basis, is there any fair creature that can contend with it? Like, doesn't he just munch the hell out of every good creature other than a Dreadnought?
Right, exactly. That's kind of the point. Is like one thing that happens after you cast all your dark rituals is you're sitting there with a bunch of untapped swamps and nothing to do because you discarded a card, right? So then it just becomes a 6/5, and that's actually, I don't know, that's a 3-turn clock most of the time.
Don't you just like tap out and then you try to attack for 6 and then it just gets, you gain 6 life, and then
your 4 Duress 3 Cabal Therapy deck maybe has something to say about that getting plowshared. Like maybe your line is like your Hypnotic Spectre got plowshared, and then like, okay, so this is my idea about Moneyball Black. It should actually just be called Home Run Black, because the whole idea of like playing Dark Ritual is not for you to just like slightly annoy your opponent with, as you describe, Priest of Gix and Rotlung Reanimator, right? like Ritual Hippie trading for Sword of Plowshares is bad, but like the upside is actually quite good. And if the follow up is like the next creature that you play is going to be able to overwhelm the Swords of Plowshares deck, then you might actually have like a good disruptive, keep your opponent off balance package where your Dark Rituals, your Duress, and your Cabal Therapy sets you up to like have one or two powerful things to do, whether it's a Hypnotic Spectre or a Phyrexian Arena or a Graveborn Muse or an Intuko Shade.
So I'm going to talk a little bit about the heyday of Hypnotic Spectre, which was 1996 in Standard. And so Hypnotic Spectre was 1994 through 1996, I'd say, look, was very fast to be adopted. Ritual Hypnotic Spectre was, everybody knew what that was from Revised or whenever they started playing. Necropotence was a little bit slower to catch on. So there, a lot of people played black decks with Hypnotic Spectre and Ritual, and not everybody played Necropotence until they did, right? So by late 1996, and certainly they kept Necropotence in Standard through like 1998. Everyone's playing Necro, but a phenomenon that happened was you would get Hypnotic Spectre into play, and you would hit your opponent, and then they would have no cards, right? Because that's kind of what the card says. But then the opponent would just like sharpen their game and play off the top of their deck, and often be able to beat the black deck if they didn't have Necropotence, right? Like, just by playing good cards off the top of their deck. And I feel like I'd rather be hitting someone with a Nantuko Shade because of that phenomenon.
I don't understand that reasoning. Like, why are they playing good cards at the top of their deck?
Well, because they got hit by Hypnotics, but they didn't have a choice.
Yeah. No, yeah, I mean, I get... But the thing is, like, they have good cards anyway, right?
Of course. Yeah, I mean, so, like, what happens is, you don't have the right answer immediately, and then they, like, knock the Lightning Bolt or the Swords of Plowshares out of your hand with the Hymn to Torok or something. You don't have it when the Hypno starts coming in, and then you just have to play off the top of your deck. I mean, people have played off the top of their deck. It's a thing that's happened.
Right. I would say that the texture of Premodern could change such that the environment is almost perfect for Hypnotic Spectre to thrive. So what you're saying, Mike, is that like, or maybe I'll just bastardize what you're saying. Like, people learn to play like mid-rangey, like good stuff standalone cards, right? So like if you're getting hit with Hypnotic Spectre and you're playing Chain of Vapor, Parallax Tide, like you're in trouble, right? If you're playing
if you draw a counterspell every turn, that's pretty bad if your opponent's hitting you with Hypnotic Spectre.
But if you're playing like an assortment of like Exalted Angels, Sylvan Library, Terravor, if you're just playing random cards that you can just cast the turn you draw them and they do something like meaningfully good, then the Dark Ritual deck is going to draw Dark Rituals and Swamps, and you can probably turn it around on them. Like now granted, like a turn one hippie on the play might be disruptive enough to even stop a mid-range deck, but if in the world where there's fewer decks that can top deck Exalted Angel or Call the Herd or Masticore or Survival of the Fittest, I guess being maybe one outlier, like in a world where there's less of that, then Ritual Hippie becomes a lot better.
Yeah,
right?
I think that also to emphasize this point, like blue decks weren't really that good, except in like very, very specific contexts until maybe like 1998, 1999. Like a Stasis deck might be good, right? But just decks that are like, you think about cards like Force of Will and Counterspell and stuff, like those decks didn't perform very, very well either at the pro or the amateur level.
What? That's not true.
In 1997, there was Counterpost, I guess.
Yeah, but, and Justin Gary won Nationals with that red-blue deck of his. Counterpost was everywhere, right?
He did win Nationals with the red-blue deck?
Yeah, it had Force of Wills and Thawing Glaciers.
You're right. That's a true statement, Lan.
Yeah.
But I think like if you contrast it with the black decks and the red decks of the era, those decks substantially outperformed every deck that was blue for over like a 3-4 year period. I mean, you're just talking about like, John at Nationals or Justin Gary at Nationals are two instances, but there was like a lot more tonnage of people winning with black decks and even white decks, right? Like Tom Champagne and Bill Macy and...
It was Necro Summer, right? And then you had Necro Summer, but it wasn't like these blue decks were non-existent, and it wasn't like... And Counterpost, Finkelpost was like the biggest deck at 97 Nationals, right? Everyone was like worried about it.
Well, it was in the U.S. Open. It was, but the best performing decks on an actual Nationals were Dave's deck and the Necro decks.
Well, Dave was playing out of the 2-4 bracket. Let's be clear. Right.
Yeah.
So.
He did go 6-0 though.
Yeah, against like fucking donkeys. Right. Let's be honest.
He beat Justin Gary.
I don't think that's possible.
It's in both their tournament reports. He beat Justin Gary.
No, but how did Justin Gary? Justin Gary didn't have 4 losses.
I think they had I think that your day 2 opponents were not lined up with your record on day 1 at that point. It was 97 because I know they played. And obviously Justin went on to win the national championship. But I agree, Dave probably beat donkeys.
But we're venturing far from Lanny's point, which I actually don't remember.
Right. Okay. So to reiterate, a few things can create an environment where this black deck can thrive, and I think a few things can create an environment where Dark Ritual is maybe better. So I am roughly in agreement with most of the cards in this deck, except for the 4 main deck Withered Wretch, because the amount of the time that it's a 2/2 is going to be like too much to justify it taking up any space in your deck containing, after the Dark Ritual's 27 mana sources, right? So like if you're drawing non-land cards, you have these Dresses and Cabal Therapies that have like a shelf life. You have Ravenous Rats, which has a shelf life. And you really don't you want your draw step to be giving you a little bit more heat. And I think that despite the fact that I've dunked on Ritual into Phyrexian Arena in the past, I think that Phyrexian Arena is probably like the next best 3-cost black spell that you can cast.
I feel like you kind of need that kind of effect because otherwise you're just going to be in the situation that I was describing, right? Like where your opponents are just top decking better stuff than is in your deck every turn. You need to be able to beat them with tonnage.
Right, exactly. And so, I was kind of examining playing more Phyrexian Arena. I think that you could play a Masticore in the main deck. You can switch your mana base to contain Dust Bowl instead of Wasteland if you have Arena gassing that up.
I kind of hate that.
So hear me out.
It's such a non-bow with like where your deck actually wants. It's a non-bow with your A game. That's kind of my.
He's saying, but you already have Wastelands.
Yeah. Well, no, I would.
That's what I'm saying. That's what I'm saying.
Oh, okay, so what I think is that once you're kind of in the world of Phyrexian Arena, like sometimes delivering you a bunch of extra swamps, like Dust Bowl letting you convert your swamps is like generally good, generally better. And then I also think that it is maybe a better plan against Replenish to try to Dust Bowl them out than to try to like get a Gloom on the table and then, die to a 7-mana Replenish at the end of the day anyways, right? Because you have to kind of like parlay Gloom into Withered Wretch.
So there's a lot of...
Or like damage, right?
A lot of ways these matchups can go, but I feel like when I look at the deck and I've watched the deck played, I think those pilots would rather just be like Wasteland your Treetop Village or Wasteland your Coastal Tower, get in for 7, than like Dust Bowl your Treetop Village or Coastal Tower, get in for 2. Right? Like that's a very different experience.
I acknowledge that. I think that there's the games that I'm trying to repair are the ones where you just are flooded and you have like literally nothing to do except for like swing with Mistress Factory, which uses 1 mana, right? Because sometimes your opponent has something to like, if your opponent is playing more mid range, they're playing more removal, they can keep your Nantuko Shades and your and your Hypnotic Specters at bay. You might want to have access to something that hopefully can like level the playing field when you are when you're playing off the top of your deck. Because one thing that these like is characteristic of these black decks is that they are like in top deck mode on turn 3.
So I was really excited to test Moneyball Black, but here my personal problem is 3 weeks ago, I was like 1 point out of first place in league. Like it was SWB and then me, and I missed a league week that I didn't anticipate missing, and then I missed one that I knew I was going to miss. And both SWB and I missed the last 2 league weeks. So like I'm maybe middle of the pack right now. Like I can't just be wasting my remaining league weeks on Moneyball Black. That's actually that's my limiting factor. So I need to play decks that I can put up some 3-0s with, or I'm gonna have to play from Land's position last season, and it's clear that I'm not gonna be able to win from 8 like he did.
I don't know. I think I missed like 9 league weeks last season.
Yes, I played every week. That's why I was in first. We can see what my win rate is.
No, but I just mean like you could just dig deep. You could dig.
I think Mike is digging as deep as he wants to right now. He doesn't have another gear that he
doesn't have. There's not playoff Mike.
No, there's just
the gear I'm in is hanging out at the beach, like, instead of going to league. So I need to get back into playing league at all week.
There's a good red deck in Pauper that Mike started playing, so Premodern doesn't even stand a chance right now in Mike's.
So I played 2 Premodern leagues since the last time we recorded. I went 2
Pauper leagues.
2 Pauper leagues. Then I'm going to play tomorrow or the day after tomorrow Pauper league again. But I'm planning to play Premodern league this week. But I don't want to be like this guy who's just at Hex every night. But that's what it looks like right now.
Why don't you get sponsored by them?
Sponsored for what? I just play in their events.
Yeah, you just hang. You're like, oh, they could put up a sign that says "Come see Mike, Florida."
Right, come see Mike go 1 and 2 in Premodern every Thursday.
No, or like a bounty on Mike, right? And then they could put a sandwich board with your face on it, and like he'll be signing copies of Decade.
All right. So my pitch is move Wither Wretch to sideboard, play more Phyrexian Arena, play a Masticore. You can leave the Dust Bowl at home if you want to. That one's obviously quite unproven, but I don't want to play Gloom, so I'd rather the sideboard just be like 4 Engineered Plague, 4 Dystopia, 4 Withered Wretch, and 3 Dealer's
What do you have against Gloom? That it's just like too polarized?
I mean, the only deck that you really are happy to like have it is Replenish, and then
White Weenie.
Yeah, sure. And then like even against Replenish, you might just still lose, right?
Yeah,
like maybe it gets you plus like 15% instead of like plus 40%.
The problem is Gloom doesn't do any damage, so even if it slows down the Parallax wave, if they get the Opalescence in play, they're just going to plow it. It costs 4 or whatever, right? But they're just going to kill it, and then they're just back online.
It'll cost 7. The Opalescence will cost 7, right?
If they get Opalescence in play, Gloom will deal damage.
Yeah. There you go.
It might deal damage.
It could, yeah. It has the potential. But, I mean, more realistically,
it also get blocked by attunement.
I mean, don't get me wrong. Like, you can get Gloom into play, and then they pay 5 mana for Seal Cleansing and the 3 mana for the activation. And you might feel pretty good about that if you have, like, anything else to do with your life. Like, or you can, like, Ritual Gloom, and maybe that does lock them out of the game because it's hard. Like, you go Ritual Gloom, and then you Wasteland them, and then they won't get to 7 mana to, like, spin Attunement into Replenish. Like, these are all things that could happen, right?
I find,
or they could just morph an Exalted Angel, or like play Sabo's Web to hold on. Yeah, there's so many things that are bad that can happen to you, and like Gloom just doesn't. Like, I see the vision, and like, if you're really worried about Replenish, like I lost to a Withered Wretch deck playing Replenish at the Sacred Torch. Like, I think that you should just use Withered Wretch, use Duress and Cabal Therapy, and then just hope that they don't attunement into the Replenish the turn that they need it, or if they do, like forcing them to have attunement plus Plowshares for Withered Wretch plus all of their enchantments that they need plus Replenish is like maybe going to get you enough time to deal 20 damage.
Well, here's the question. What does a meta look like where you would want to play this deck?
I think that the meta could be in this like combo heavy place where a lot of these like blue decks are running around, and like you can like Duress, Hypnotic Spectre, cheese them out, and I think that that's good. And then I think that the rest of the problem, hopefully, you can solve with Engineered Plague and Dystopia. This deck is hilariously soft to Goblin Lackey on the draw. But Goblins, is less popular these days.
Yeah.
I think that this deck is definitely targeting blue decks, and then it's also targeting like synergy decks, right? So I'm not going to say that Devour can't just like top deck win against this, like just put Altar in play and then top deck the Tinker or just have 6 mana or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
But I think that you're going to win a number of games, hopefully around 60% of the time, where like you start on some hand disruption and you end with Nantuko Shade and Hypnotic Spectre, and then you just like fill in the gaps with sideboard cards.
Can I answer Lan's question kind of obliquely? Like, I think that not everybody picks their deck targeting a metagame, and maybe people pick a deck like this for its baseline capabilities, even though if you're just going to pick a number, this deck rolls lower than some other decks. Like, they just want to cast Hypnotic Spectre on the first turn, right? Or they just want the experience of having an overabundance of hand destruction to kill Dreadnoughts.
So then the question then becomes: is this the best Hypnotic Spectre deck?
I think that this deck is at least built to be, right. Like its idea, or at least my imagination of it, is to like have Dark Ritual hippie capabilities, and then also have capabilities that around like casting Hypnotic Spectre on turn 3, or casting something other than Hypnotic Spectre off your Dark Ritual. I think that you just get that kind of mid-rangey. I mean, that's the idea of the Moneyball analogy, is just that you're not super sad to be drawing a lot of your cards. Some of them are really awkward, like top deck Duress is a classic, when your opponent already has 0 cards in hand. But hopefully, the play pattern of like have these 2 pretty good threats in the form of Husk and Hippie, plus Shade and Hippie.
Oh, okay.
And
Lanny, where are you on Spawning Pool?
I'm out. The Spawning Pool has been replaced with Swamp in my version. I briefly considered Cabal Pit, but I decided that if I'm going to play 4 Phyrexian Arena, I'm just going to go on the mantra of like life is equal to cards. So we're not going to
I feel like 2 Wastelands is weird. I feel like I would rather just have like 4 Wastelands and like maybe go to like 14, 15 Swamp.
I think
14 or 15 Swamp and Nantuko Shade?
Yeah, bro.
Yeah. That's the issue that I have, is that you need your Nantuko Shade to get like 4 pumps in to like handle the tallest guy, right? And you're never gonna have 4 pumps if you're playing 8 colorless lands.
Ritual friends.
Or Priest of Gix to filter.
Yeah. Never mind. I'm back in.
This one Spinning Darkness in the main deck, none in the sideboard. The sideboard is just laughably constructed, in my opinion. No offense to the Moneyball.
That's why I would just change it.
Like,
right?
This
I would just
deck
play
is horrible against
engine.
red. How are there no red sideboard cards?
Well, because you're main decking them.
I wouldn't. I mean, I just
Darkness.
I wouldn't like try to build this deck to beat Burn specifically. Like this deck, if you're asking me what kind of meta I would want to play this deck in, it would be like the meta that has not a lot of Burn decks.
Really? I think you could just sideboard like 3 Masticore, Spinning Darkness, and Funeral Charm, and you would be very serviceable against red. Like, I don't think you'd be like 75%, but like you'd definitely take matches off them.
All right, that's fine. I mean, I left some slots for you after the Dystopia, Engineered Plague, and Withered Wretches. So you can use those 3 spots as you choose.
What about the real best 3-mana black card, Phyrexian Negator? I know it's not good against Burn, but it's good against a lot of non-Burn decks.
I'm kind of fine with that too. I think it's like a little awkward when you need to like also have like removal, right? Because it's like you can protect Negator. Like Negator is really good against those same decks that like Duress Hippie is good against, right? Because like they less likely have guys that jump in front. But like maybe there's enough random Mishra's Factories in those decks that Negator still becomes kind of a liability.
Yeah, I mean, you just got to be one with the Negator, right? You got to just be like, all right, like I'm gonna lose 2 permanents to the Mishra's Factory, but you're gonna lose the Mishra's Factory. Like as I trample
And
over for 3.
yeah, or 2 because you're playing against a good
Oh,
player.
fair enough. Fair enough.
Yeah.
All right.
So this is what I have to say about that. I think it's plausible that the benefit of busted negator draws like vastly outweighs like the downside of like negator being a somewhat conditional card in a deck that is striving to be as unconditionally good with its like meat as possible, right?
So
If it's gonna be, it's not a support card, like it's a hammer, and like this deck ideally would be able to cast and use its hammer whenever it draws it, especially if it's coming out of the sideboard.
I think I'm on the wavelength that Lana's kind of implying here, which is that the deck that finished first has 1 negator in the sideboard, none in the main deck, and the deck that finished in second has 2 negators in the sideboard and none in the main deck. Like, maybe we just have more negators. And this just reminds me of a story from U.S. Nationals 2000 when John knew that he was going to be playing against Chris Benefell, who was playing mono red at that tournament, and he wasn't sure how to win the matchup. So he asked Pro Tour Hall of Famer Darwin Castle, and Darwin Castle said to just like max out his negators because they have 5 toughness, and the red decks could only deal 3 damage. I don't know if John took Darwin Castle's advice, which sounded terrible to me. But he did beat Benefell 5-0 over the course of 2 matches. So,
yeah, I mean, like there was the famous persecute, right? For
he first turn persecuted him 3 times.
yeah.
In those 5 games.
Yeah, I think it's maybe telling that the pit rack deck in first place is just like a Skittering Scourge pit rack deck. It's just like a beatdown deck, right? And maybe that's better because it also has like ritual hippie capabilities, but it can also ritual pit, and then But I would say that pit rack has been pretty played throughout the history of Premodern, and it's never really had its time. So I don't know if its time is now.
Do you think it's been pretty played? It has had almost no play in our local meta in the 3-4 years that I've been playing.
I think most people who pick up bottomless pit decks in our meta like set them down pretty quickly because our meta maybe puts tier below 2 decks into like SWB dropped a very nice message like the other day at the Discord, which was like, oh, I started playing Grow and I set it down very quickly after like 3 test matches against Blue Green Madness, right? It's like the bar for a deck to like make you satisfied for your Thursday night is much higher than it maybe is in other places, which is not to say that Pit Rack doesn't, people haven't been in other environments that are hard or whatever, but like people love the Pit Rack deck. I've seen it on Magic Online all the time, and like the telling difference is that if you queue up a casual game on Magic Online, people play lots of Pit Rack, and then if you queue up a league competitive game on Magic Online, people do not play a lot of Pit Rack. So that's all I have to say.
I have recollection of Pit Rack being played at 2 meetups that I was at. One of them, I was playing red, and I did not play against the Pit Rack deck, but I do know that it beat Pog, who was playing Mono Blue Dreadnought. And then the other one, actually, I played it in a $1,000 tournament that I top 8'd when I was playing Dreadnought. But then another one was SWB himself was playing Pit Rack, and I was playing red, and it was a really close match. Went to 3, and I got the belt that night. But he could plausibly have gotten the belt with Pit Rack. It was a really close match. So I had a lot more respect for it than I think people are inferring in general.
Yeah, I mean, I think that it's not a very good deck, and I'm obviously at winning at Misty is a great accomplishment, and I don't want to take away from that, and focusing on the like second place deck is kind of silly, but the second place deck to me at least is working off of an interesting sort of theory of how to approach Dark Ritual into stuff.
I was really surprised I was able to beat it with Dreadnought when I did, because like I had to assemble a 2-card combo, at some point after all this machinery had been cast, and it got there. But it seems very good against some good strategies.
I mean, definitely if you go duress into pit, that's like really great for you. But a lot of the times, your opponent like draws Gush, and that's like really, really good against you. I played SW was playing like the pitless version of the mono black deck.
That deck is horrible.
And he was playing like a mono black. He was playing Fran's pitless version, and I was playing Surf and Turf, and I just, I could tide him, or I could whatever. I could like outdraw him. So you kind of like
and
need
you just
pit
got him with
for
factories.
that. Yeah. Well, you just need pit for the Dreadnought matchup, and then I don't know. Pit is like kind of a weird card. Like it puts both of you to 0. So kind of like you were saying, it's like if your opponent can just top deck a card that does something like
I don't
like replenish.
Yeah.
I think
notably.
I think I got a Meddling Mage in play, and then I stockpiled Gush and was able to assemble the Dreadnought combo, even though I was under the pit, which was very surprising, like I said.
Yeah, I mean, what's nice is that if you do like Gush your way into Dreadnought combo, and your opponent has a pit in play, like they're not going to have any removal in hand.
They've got like a 1-turn window to answer your Dreadnought.
Yeah, so that's maybe the upside and the downside of like the pit, and I don't know. Maybe you need Rose's Bauble. I have no idea. But moving on from mono black, what other? I mean, it feels like I said, it's a slow news week. I feel like a new deck has not really hit. Fran just posted a video. He revisited Unplayable Dead Guy Ale, and sort of confirmed, maybe ran into a rash of bad luck, but sort of confirmed that it's just a very awkward deck to be playing right now.
He changed Playable Dead Guy Ale to Unplayable Dead Guy Ale by the end of the video, by the way. He says, I don't think we could call this PDGA anymore. So Jeff Rabobsky came in third in the Misty tournament. His deck is posted now, if you haven't seen it. And this deck's actually... I think this is way more up your alley of what actually all three of us have been talking about relative to the first and second place decks. I will post it in the chat that we have going right now if you guys haven't seen it.
I mean, it basically is the same as the Pit Rack deck, but it has Bauble, it has Arena instead of Pit, and it has like 3 main deck Funeral Charm. And then like it doesn't have Skittering Scourge, right? But the mana is exactly the same. 13 Swamp, 4 Factory, 4 Wasteland. 13 Swamp just like completely sends me. I mean, these aren't shade decks, so they don't need as many swamps. And he's also using Innocent Blood. But the rats therapy thing is very exciting though. Like Rats Cabal Therapy has like a very high likelihood of taking 3 against your opponent, right?
Well, I love the Urza's Bauble as the stockpile. I wish this deck had Pit though, right? Like,
it has Arena. Arena's like better than Pit.
They're literally opposite. They do the opposite thing of each other.
Yeah, but what's nice is that Arena is not symmetrical. Like, I'm definitely with this version of Pitless Rack than not. I could live without the rack. Like, I would rather. I mean, we are turning on some Innocent Bloods in the sideboard, so you can't just play a bunch of Skittering Scourge, but I'd rather play a bunch of Skittering Scourge over the rack. Or Masticore.
I love the rack. Whatever. The rack is gas.
I mean, when you don't have Pit to turn it on, then, you're...
Well, yeah, that's true.
Your control opponents can just, like, hang out.
Just have 7 cards in hand the whole game?
Yeah, I mean, after you've, like, Gush just kind of is really good against the rack.
Lan, what do you think about this third place deck?
You said you put the list in the chat?
I did.
Where's the chat?
Probably your phone.
Your phone.
Oh. Sorry, I was looking in the window.
Yeah, the window doesn't have chat. We're trying to use Adobe. Trying to stay away from any paid platform. But it's a fight.
This deck looks pretty... It's not impressive to me.
Aggressively 51%.
No, it's just like the third. First of all, I don't know if anyone's mentioned this in our conversation yet, but it only has 13 swamps, right? And that kind of sends me.
Yeah, I mentioned it.
I'm just kidding. I'm kidding. Yeah.
Yeah.
But like, it feels basically like rack or bust. This deck. Right, because it doesn't really deal damage otherwise. Like the specters and the rats aren't
Oh,
right.
like this
It
deck is
feels like the Oakland A's before they adopted the Moneyball approach.
like this deck
like
seems
like the rack is on their team and it's just like, hey, this guy never gets on base. Like, why do we have him?
like
I mean, like
this
this
deck
deck.
seems.
It looks like it just like tries to empty your opponent's hand, right? And then like, you use Funeral Charm during your opponent's like draw phase to keep them out of resources, and then just let the rack finish them off. But it feels like very much like a 1994 deck.
Like, if you knew Andy Vollmer was in the tournament you were playing, like, you would not bring this deck, right? Like, that's that's a sure loss.
I mean, that's the thing is like I think that this deck can plausibly lose to Gush, right? Whereas like maybe the others are going to be doing a little bit better. I mean, you can also just board out the rack. Like that's definitely an option.
Well,
like I'd rather not be under the pit when my opponent puts a Dreadnought into play.
how do you?
I was to say, were there like just not like was this like a not very blue heavy field at all?
Yeah, no. I mean, as you can see from like the top 16, right? There's like a couple blue decks. There's a Stasis deck and there's a Landstill deck, and then that just kind of that's just kind of the total.
Well, it certainly gets a lot better in the absence of Factor Fiction, Gush, and Landstill.
Standstill, yeah.
Yeah. All right. I mean, you could
yes.
out Mistress Factor your Standstill opponent sometimes, but
And sometimes you won't.
is taken.
It's true. Mike.
Last week, Andy wanted us to talk about how to play with Meddling Mage. What do you guys think about that?
I think Meddling Mage is very much a skill card.
How would you guide an unskilled player into one day being able to play Meddling Mage with skill and confidence?
I think the easiest way is to first of all think about asymmetrical effects, if you can, like a card that would immediately affect you that is not in your deck. Like a good example is I was playing against Mike a long time ago, and it was like Meddling Mage. We're playing like one deck with Meddling Mage versus Burn, and I cast Meddling Mage pretty early on. I think when Mike was may have been tapped or maybe he only had one mana open, and I named Lightning Bolt, and then Mike was very surprised because he said, I think you should probably name Fire Blast or Ball Lightning. And I was like, no, because like I'm stranded. Like since you didn't cast a lightning bolt in response, I'm stranding lightning bolts in your hand, right? And then you can lightning bolt is a spell that you cast multiple of in a single turn, and you could cast it like almost any time during the course of the game. Whereas you basically have to take an entire turn off to cast like Ball Lightning or Fire Blast, and you certainly aren't in danger of like being hit by multiple Ball Lightnings in a single turn, and you're only in danger of being hit by multiple Fire Blasts when it's the terminal turn, right? Like when the game's about to end. Oftentimes you'll see people playing aggressive decks or decks that are like the beatdown in the matchup against decks that are the control deck, and they'll name Swords to Plowshares, right, to turn off like removal against their own creatures. As examples, if you're playing against a combo deck, right, you want to name the key combo card that could cause you to lose in that specific spot.
You could just also name the bridge, right? Like Leon's
Like
talking
a
about
snaring bridge.
No, like
I'm
if
just
you're, let's say you're on the play, right, and you're playing against either a combo or a control deck, and you're playing a Meddling Mage on turn 2 into like a tapped land or something like that. Like your opponent isn't out of like, the basically mana screwed phase of their game, right? They have to probably cast a bunch of impulses or something like that to get to the meat of their game, which could be on turn 2 or 3. They're already in the terminal turn, but you could keep them from getting there. Like that's a thing. Like oftentimes you have these decks that are very good at answering the final thing, but so you might not be scared of their last play. Which is, I think, similar to what Lan was talking about with not wanting to preemptively counter a Fire Blast. You can keep them from the bridge that gets to the last play, and the game will just never get there. Just kill them with Meddling Mage.
Yeah, it depends on the compositions of the deck. It's very much dependent on the matchup, what your deck is trying to do and what your opponent's deck's trying to do. So Meddling Mage is super good because it's pretty cheap. It can beat down, and it also can just act as a purely asymmetrical effect, right? Like it can, in theory, stop your opponent from stopping you, or you could stop, or it stops the opponent completely, depending on what they're trying.
Right. So I wanted to zoom in a little bit on maybe like a specific kind of Meddling Mage spot, which I encounter quite often, and I don't have, I think, the most organized reasoning process through, and try to get your insight on that. So oftentimes I find when I cast Meddling Mage, I go into this game of trying to think of the cards that they would have cast by the turn that I'm playing Meddling Mage, right? So this isn't like any of the places where it's like, oh, my opponent goes Forest Elf and I name Survival of the Fittest because that's like the only thing that I can name. It's not like the Swords of Plowshares example. It's more so like sometimes it's, my opponent has 4 mana up, they're playing blue, they're playing Landstill or whatever, and I cast Meddling Mage, and then like I sit there and I'm like, maybe I'll name Fact or Fiction, right? Because like I have a read that maybe it's a card in their hand.
Well, if they were a good player and they didn't counter your Meddling Mage, they should cast Fact or Fiction in response.
Right, absolutely.
But then you get information.
Yeah, exactly. They cast Fact or Fiction in response, and then I get to put cards in their hand, and then name a card that I put in their hand. Right?
Yeah.
So it's a weird spot, or just consider like maybe it's like turn 5, right? Like maybe, like it just boils down to how likely do you think that a card is in an opponent's hand, and like how do you balance being like, okay, like maybe I can snag some like weird card stuck in my opponent's hand, right? Maybe I have an inkling that they're holding like a few copies of Sylvan Library. I don't know. I can't think of a great.
I wish my opponents were holding several copies.
So, Lanny, I think you had started this segment by saying like you don't have the most organized thought process. I think that one thing that you could do is take a step back and be like, what is the function of the Meddling Mage? So I would look back at your match with Rich Shea that you used to win the PSS a couple of years ago, right? And Rich made the observation that instead of playing Grow, you could have just been playing Dreadnought and beaten him the same way, right? Like, the cards that you cast were not unique to Grow. They were cards that were largely overlapped with 12-12. Blue-White 12-12 was the dominant version of the archetype at the time, and that caused Rich to kind of rib you over that. But if you're in a game where the Meddling Mage's function is to kill the opponent, right? Like, you'll typically name the removal that they have that can deal with a Meddling Mage, right? So you could, the default thing when you have 2 Meddling Mages is to name, like, Plow and Wrath of God, if those are the cards that are in your opponent's deck.
Yeah. Or Plow and Oath of Druids.
Yeah, it's like whatever that aspect of your opponent's defense is, usually you'll name Plow first, and then name whatever the secondary card is, which gets you in a weird situation where the opponent has a better creature than a Meddling Mage, and you'll often lock out your own Plow. Like that. Right. Yeah, that is a very common scenario for Meddling Mage.
So I wanted
players.
to kind of separate this into like levels, right? So like level 1, which you're describing, is like linear Meddling Mage. It's like there's two. It's
functional. It's right. Like, is the Meddling Mage's job to win the game? If his job is to win the game, is different than if his job is just to be a 2/2 counterspell.
This parlays well into like the discussion we had last week, where like it's good in general if you're like starting with a deck that has strategic clarity in the matchup, so that you like know exactly what gets you closer and what gets you farther away from winning. So like Meddling Mage naming Swords of Plowshares, Meddling Mage naming your opponent's like key card, like would be it Survival of the Fittest or Tinker or Replenish, is like I don't struggle with that. I think that, it needs to be said. It needs to be said for, our listeners, like, hey, the role of Meddling Mage against Replenish is to typically either name Replenish or Swords of Plowshares. Like Swords of Plowshares if they're off balance, or Replenish if they have been like spinning attunement and they like obviously can just win the game by casting Replenish. Against Elves, if you are lucky enough to be on the play, naming Survival of the Fittest is great. Yeah, and that extrapolates into most Survival of the Fittest decks, because most Survival of the Fittest decks, being base green, tend to not have a lot of removal.
Yeah, the problem is if you get the Meddling Mage after their Survival's already in play, it's basically a moot card.
Yeah, it does nothing. It does basically nothing. Against Enchantress, you have the option of trying to stop Enchantress effects or to stop
I
Enchantress
mean,
win condition.
you could
But they're
you could easily be in a situation where you name Parallax Wave and Replenish, and your opponent might not be able to win the game anymore.
right. I mean, they're playing at least 2 plowshares in the main deck these days, so you'll have to have a plan for that. Against Oath decks, it's obvious that you name Oath. Against Landstill, like we talked about, like Wrath and Plowshare seem pretty obvious. The list goes on.
Wrath and Plowshares and never ever attack.
Yeah, because of Decree of Justice,
Yeah.
right? Of course. So you kind of are like waiting for you to like resolve a creature that is larger than Decree of Justice tokens. And then, by then they might just be able to resolve a humility against you, and that will be that. So those, I think, people can sort of reason out. Like I said, it does need to be said just so that that's kind of like a good baseline. But the thing that I think is like not obvious is when you are just trying to cast like a good Meddling Mage in a phase of the game where it's just like not clear if you have like some strategic clarity where like I need to stop this from getting cast in order for me to win, right? Because if you are able to be in a spot where like let's say the texture of your hand means that you can answer a lot of the cards that you would typically name, right? So one example that happens a lot to me is just that I would normally name Oath of Druids with my first Meddling Mage, but if I have Ray of Revelation, if I have Ray of Revelation in my hand, I name some other thing, right? And then when you're at that sort of level, things get a little bit more difficult. Like I think that it is really astute sometimes to name Fact or Fiction, against your standstill opponent, right? Because like, what if they have like a couple plowshares in their graveyard? And
unfortunately, I feel like this is boiling down to it depends.
Sure, but I think it's helpful to try to offer up a strategic thought process to help people through and just kind of like decide on what's important when what's important isn't obvious. Like, granted, that is obviously just what being good and getting better at Magic is about, but I think that there are some interesting,
just a really good rubric is at this stage in the game, you could just think, what cards have your opponent not cast yet that you don't want them to cast, that aren't in your deck?
So, I agree with Lan. And, Lanny, are there decks other than Grow that would have Meddling Mage in their deck in a sideboarded game against Oath decks?
Well, Bant Terragon, Flippy.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, Meddling Mage tends to be played, Terragon is like the most popular Meddling Mage deck right now.
White, blue, Dreadnought.
I don't know. Does White Blue Dreadnought want Meddling Mage after sideboarding against Oath?
Probably.
I guess
not.
You can name Plow. I guess that's good. Okay.
Yeah,
I feel like the trap.
Well, you can build your strategy around it, right?
Well,
so like, if you have Disenchant, you can name Plowshares, and you can also like name Oath of Druids, and then you have a 2/2, which might be able to win you the game if you're gonna like back it up with Armageddon.
There are a lot of asymmetries, like what Leon was talking about. Like if one deck has Seal and the other deck has Disenchant, right? Like you can keep yours while turning theirs off, right? That's pretty cool. But the thing that I am wondering about is like you had that long period, Lanny, where you were so vulnerable to any deck that had Call of the Herd, no matter what deck you were playing. And I feel like maybe that's a byproduct of like just having these Meddling Mages that can't name something that has enough breadth.
Well,
right?
they can name Call of the Herd, right?
Yeah, but like,
no, that's
you name Call of the Herd and they can cast the Terravor, right? Like you lock down Terravor at Oath, but they just have 3/3s in the form of Treetop Village. Like, and so I'm just thinking like this is just collapsing in one direction or the other, no matter what. So the point that's why I asked the question. I'm like, are there decks other than Grow that actually want this card in these matchups? Because it seems like very bad to me. Like so. But there was an answer, right? Like Flippy can't really get away from Meddling Mage. Like they're gonna be in a situation where they have to cast creatures into Oath.
The Bant Terragon is gonna behave in the same way, right? Like the strategy out of these decks is like, okay, well we're gonna board in like Ray Revelation, and we're gonna continue to play like our game where we just can't let an oath be on the table, and then after we make sure that oath isn't on the table, like we play like the second part, the other game, right?
But
the first game is defeating oath, and then the second game is defeating your opponent. And then if you ascertain that Meddling Mage can be part of your strategy in beating your opponent, like Bantarian is just a deck that has its own Call the Herd and Terravor, right?
Yeah, so correct me if I'm wrong. Don't a lot of these decks take out their non-Terravor creatures?
Aren't we getting lost though? Because like, there's like a theoretical discussion on how to play Meddling Mage?
Okay.
Well, I think it's a reasonable example because Mike is basically saying like, okay, well, in the oath situation, you might just board it out, and then my counterpoint is just that Meddling Mage being a part of your deck forces you to answer these questions before you go into a game, right? And then like guides your sideboard choices. So you can have a strategy where you board out Meddling Mage, but you wouldn't board out like Weathered Wayfarer because Weathered Wayfarer is like really good in Wasteland Mirrors, right?
I mean, I'm just thinking like D-Tau, I don't know what creatures he sided out when he was against the Oath deck, but he sided in Red Blast, right? Because he's like, he just wanted to counter Quiet Speculation, which I found to be very surprising. And I just feel like a lot of these guys are just siding out so many of their non-huge hitters because, look, the liability of triggering an Oath and getting a Weathered Wayfarer is too terminal, right? Like, I don't know. I don't have enough experience in specifically these matchups, but most of them seem like Meddling Mage is bad to me. So, but
yeah,
I don't know. I think to Lance's point, maybe I'm not answering the question then.
Yeah, I mean,
I just thought we were asking a question about like actual theoretical play.
Well, that's fine. I think that you also like there's a little bit of like Meddling Mage homework that goes into it of just kind of being like, okay, if I have in the places that where like Meddling Mage is a liability, like you should not be like unwilling to simply not play Meddling Mage to begin with. I think Meddling Mage is a bit load bearing in Grotog and Bant Terravor because of how good they are against combo matchups. And while Grotog on the face of it seems like a deck that should like stomp combo, like it does that with the help of Meddling Mage, right? It's not actually, great against combo if all it was is like a deck with sort of mid creatures and like a few but not a lot of counter spells. Like it doesn't have, a great mana disruption or hand disruption angle to like back those up. So Meddling Mage pulls a lot of extra weight there.
I just mean like game one Bant Terrageddon versus Gat, for example, right? Like the mid-game situation you described, Gush is a perfectly reasonable thing to name.
Yeah, I mean that's like a great example of kind of a weird one. These are decks that have like a lot of overlapping cards. A lot of times I get opponents naming Quirion Dryad like, in places where it's bad, and sometimes people do it when it's like really good,
Lanny, from the Gat side, if you're playing against a conventional Terrageddon deck, what do you typically name with the Meddling Mage?
That is a good question. So I typically would name like something like Call the Herd, right? like because if you like look at the decks, like I'll name either Call the Herd, or if somebody has a Meddling Mage naming Swords to Plowshares on the battlefield, then I can name Terravor, right? Because then they can never beat a 4/4 Dryad. So like depending on the game state, where like if I know that I'm not exposed to Terravor, like I can name Plowshares and then follow it up with like my big guy if it's like Mystic Enforcer or if it's Quirion Dryad, or I'll name Call the Herd. And sometimes even though like I'm a Gush Diamond deck, like in my very first Premodern tournament, I was playing against Jeff Ferris playing Terrageddon, and I named Armageddon, a card that was in both of our decks in a game 2 when it was like likely that he sideboarded out, because I was like, well, if I get Armageddon right now, that's like the only way I lose, because like I had the rest of the game locked up. So basically the flow chart is like, can I stop a Terravor using counter magic? If yes, then I'll just name Swords to Plowshares, because I can just counter the Terravor and like assert dominance on the battlefield with my 6 creatures that are larger than a 3/3.
Oh, I didn't appreciate that that strategy that you're talking about, because I was thinking like, just from what Land said, it was like, oh, you could name Gush or something. I'm like, wow, it seems like the Terravor's Meddling Mage is like very applicable against Gat, and like Gat's just naming fucking Call the Herd, and like is gonna get gotten. But if you have the expectation that a Kyrian Dryad is gonna be 4/4 or bigger, or God forbid you have a Mystic Enforcer online, you just kind of have the game. Like that's pretty cool.
The best thing about Grotog against Terravor is that you just don't have to work very hard. Like your counter spells go a really long way because Terravor is, in my view, a little bit over reliant on like bigger relevant spells. Like Terravor itself, or Armageddon, which you're pretty good against. And so
your deck is literally built to exploit it.
Right. And so, like, the only way that you lose is if they have, like, Call the Herd advantage before you're able to establish a battlefield. And so, like, their Swords of Plowshares are much better than yours, because your Swords of Plowshares, like, you don't really need to target anything besides Terravor, or, if the tempo is not favoring you, then, of course, you can plow an Elephant Token or a Treetop Village and whatnot. Like, those are all fine plays. Well, like, turning off your own Plowshares is going to hurt them. Like, turning off Plowshares for both players is going to hurt them more than it hurts you. Because you can also select for your Plowshares a little bit better. I think this is maybe changing now that, Terravor decks could have 4 copies of Sylvan Library that, can maybe influence their ability to, get closer to the cards that they need. But classically speaking, I never, like, this was like one of the best matchups for Grotog.
Huh. That makes sense because your Gushes are so good against their Geddons too.
Yeah.
And your Mox Diamonds and Gushes are good against their Wandering Wayfarers.
Yeah, they're Weather Wayfarer. Like, Weather Wayfarer is bad.
Wayfarer, sorry.
Yeah. Weather Wayfarer is bad. Armageddon is bad. Like, their own Mox Diamond is bad because, like, they have Mox Diamonds for the purposes of making their Wayfarers and, Geddon's good, but they're not good. So, then they also have this card that doesn't do anything. And then, their Wastelands are not great. But times have changed. Like, I think that if you were a Terragen player and you like adopted a strategy of like really aggressively going after your opposing, like the opponent's Mox Diamonds, you can use Wasteland to stop City of Brass. You can plausibly cut the Grotog deck out of having mana, but the way that I tend to play Grow these days is to like never put vulnerable mana sources into play without something to do with them. So
yeah, I was all about attacking the mana sources before.
Yeah. I think that the like attacking Mox Diamond is like a good way to attack the Grotog deck. So much so that you can plausibly just like board in your extra copies of Naturalize, which is crazy to say to like target only 4 cards out of the Grotog deck. But I think
it's always a 2-for-1.
Yeah, I think it might be. It just might be the play.
I mean, you bring in all the Naturalizes you possibly can in the Dreadnought matchup, and they also only have 4 artifacts. So
I think most people can spot the difference between Phyrexian Dreadnought and Mox Diamond.
Look, man, I'm just listing 2 different decks that only have 4 artifacts.
There's also the fun topic of Meddling Mage against Goblins. Fran used to side out Meddling Mage against Goblins when he was playing Blue-White Dreadnought. I never side out Meddling Mage against Goblins. I am like very happy to name Goblin Warchief. I'm very happy to block Goblin Warchief. Sometimes just keep stopping them from attacking with Siege Gang Commander and like forcing them to throw a Goblin first is like not bad. Naming the thing that they just got with Goblin Matron is not bad. They tend to want to board out Gem Palm Incinerator, so it's hard for them to remove. And then sometimes they're on the play and you block Goblin Lackey. You
threaten to block Goblin Lackey. And you don't actually block Goblin Lackey.
Right. And you can name Naturalize, which is, tends to be what Goblins uses to stop Phyrexian Dreadnought. Against Dreadnought, you name Dreadnought. That's pretty, easy and interesting. The second one, you tend to name the card that can kill Meddling Mage. In this case, it would be it would be Chain of Vapor or Powder Keg. But it kind of depends. You have to have a good read. We talked about Replenish, Enchantress, Oath decks, Survival decks.
I think that's pretty tough, Lanny. Like the more at least how Andy Levine has it, you're probably playing against chains, powder kegs, and dominates after sideboarding, if this is the matchup.
The mono blue deck, the Dreadnought deck?
Yeah.
Well,
So-
Yeah, I mean, if you have all of those...
Dominated still names Dreadnought.
Yeah.
Yeah, but now you have to block their 2/2, right?
Yeah, but I'm just saying, right?
Yeah,
like,
with your 0-4
Yeah, if you... What 0-4 do you have in your Meddling Mage deck?
Wall of Tears,
Well, if tier... Okay.
then it bounces back.
Okay. We broke... And then they dominate your Wall of Tears?
No, then I replay it and name Dominate again.
Oh, get them. Okay. Is there... and then, I'll reiterate what Andy was, talking about. The Orum's Chant mode of Meddling Mage is actually, quite reasonable, where you just, name Counterspell.
isn't that how you almost won the Bearded tournament?
That's how I won a match in the Bearded tournament, was by naming Counterspell and Mana Leak and then casting Armageddon. A pro tip, if there's a Dreadnought in play, you tend to want to name Foil, because that's a card that they won't have cast. It's the last card they want to cast, right? It's always the last line of protection. But naming Vision Charm is also perfectly reasonable here, because, like I said, Orm's Chant mode, if they have one blue up and you cast Meddling Mage, naming Vision Charm makes a lot of sense, right? So thinking about how you want the current turn to go is a lot easier. Against the Rock, you used to name Pernicious Deed. I still think that's correct, but also less relevant. Yeah, I mean, I think
It depends on your deck, right?
Yeah.
What permanents do you need to protect from a potential Pernicious Deed?
Right. Against Edicts, I always thought it was kind of interesting question. I tend to never name Edicts with my Meddling Mage, Innocent Blood or Diabolic Directionary's Edict, just because I'm okay, I guess if they have Edict, I'll sacrifice my Meddling Mage to it, and my other creature will still live. So ideally I would just name Smother, or the thing that I need to stop from hitting my Korean Dryad, since the Meddling Mage is going to stop both an Edict and the card it's naming.
Yeah.
But I do think it's interesting. I have tons and tons of video of me playing Grotog, and I have plenty of times where I've named the wrong thing with Meddling Mage, and I've gotten in the habit of talking about my thought process out loud, and I still think that I have a lot to sort of figure out when you're in these weird games. One of the more interesting Meddling Mage casts is the Grotog versus Cephalid Breakfast matchup, where they have two different win cons and they have access to Cabal Therapy and Reanimate.
They could just cast Terravor also. That's the...
Yeah, and they can cast Terravor, right? So I have played against Artie with my Grotog deck multiple times, and every single match I've just been dizzy with my Meddling Mage names. I was he doesn't he has a Cephalid Illusionist, but he didn't jam the Nomads on core. So I'm just not going to name Nomads. I'm going to name some utility Cabal Therapy, because my plan is to untap and cast Engineered Plague, naming Cephalid or whatever. And then I guess he just top decked the Nomads, or I had a wrong read on the situation.
Then he splattered you.
I have found that naming Cabal Therapy is pretty good, because Cabal Therapy is how they protect you from countering Shallow Grave or Crozen Reclamation, or Exhume or Reanimate. And obviously you can't name Exhume, Reanimate, and Shallow Grave, because there's too many of them. And
they all have different names.
They all have different names. Hermit Druid, definitely does get the job done and makes your life a little easier, because that's the one card win con.
The big problem is if they have Cephalid, Nomad, and or Terravor, and they have it online for half a turn, you basically can't interact anymore, right? Because they're just going to Cabal Therapy you.
Yeah, you have to
be
preemptive.
Yeah, so it's that's such an elegant deck. I really love that deck.
Here's a question. You're playing against the Meddling Mage, right? Game 2, they name a card that you cited out. Do you feel good, smart, because because they, right? You made them cast a 2/2, or do you feel potentially dumb because you're this card's more important than I thought?
It depends if I win. If they're naming a card that's not in my deck and I lose the game, I do not feel smart.
It depends on my opponent. If my opponent is Land, then I'll feel dumb. If my opponent is Michael J, then I'll feel like a genius.
I mean,
Mike, what if you lose the game, but that's because you mana stalled.
Oh, well, that's rarely the reason that I lose.
the card they named with Meddling Mage was Rampant Growth. What?
I mean, like, I watched Roland top 4 to Bearded 1K with me a month or two ago, and he didn't lose any games until he lost to SWB in the top 4.
Classic.
And I watched him name cards that were not in his opponent's deck, like, every round. Right? He literally just, like, playing against Mono Blue Tide, he just, like, slams his second turn Meddling Mage and names Standstill. This is not in his opponent's deck. You know, like, so, I don't know. He got in with it over and over again.
So should he have been playing Galena Knight instead?
Yeah, actually, that's a good follow-up question. I think that closes the loop on Meddling Mage. If we don't have anything else, does anybody have anything else?
Oh, I didn't know if you guys wanted to talk about the playoffs at all.
Yeah, let's talk about
we
the
can.
playoffs.
So, flashing back all the way to like what month was this? Was this
It's
last
like about a month ago, yeah.
Yeah,
Maybe like 1994.
So Lan was the winner of the Hex & Co. Union Square location Premodern League, a quarter of league play leading into a top 8 playoff seeded with points. You came back from your 8th seed to win out with your Land Devourer deck. Tell me about it.
Well, there was a lot of like misinformation, and everyone's trying to figure out what everyone else was playing, right? And it was a weird thing because no one actually, other than Reagan, I think no one ended up playing like their signature deck. Like everyone was trying to like game the top.
Mike played a signature deck.
Kind of.
I played with 4 Black Vices.
And Flame Rifts.
Flame Rift and like...
So Mike tried to level me, but I double leveled Mike. So it was pretty sweet. In that, like, Mike was like, well, Land plays these, like, BS decks that like to touch. You know, he likes to do a lot of deck touching and hold cards. So I'm going to punish him for it.
That's not entirely true, right? Stompy and Devourer are like...
Yeah, those are, like... The main thing is, like, I guess, like, historically I've played, like, Hoth and Replenish and, like, Landstill.
Right,
you know?
Yeah.
And then, like...
You haven't played Landstill in a long time, though, now.
Well, I mean, I haven't played a lot in a long time, I guess.
Fair.
I guess, like, Mike was trying to, like, counter the fact that I usually like playing powerful decks, right? Which is, like, an entirely reasonable assumption. Like, in fact, I was considering playing Replenish, but was afraid enough of Jeff Ferris in the second round that I actually just bought 4 Mind Bends just in case to deal with like Gloom in case he was on Mono Black Clerics. But in the end, I just thought that Devour was a very powerful deck it loses to cards rather than to decks. And I thought that Mike would either be on Burn or Elves to leverage his like turn 1 or his being on the play. But then later he tells me that Elves doesn't really benefit from being on the play, so maybe that was a miscalculation on my part. But
I think Elves benefits from being on the play insofar as like putting an elf.
Everybody benefits from being on the play. But,
yeah,
but it's like it's not like Dreadnought and Burn really and Goblin Lackey really benefit from being on the play. If you're playing a deck that's going to accelerate with the first turn Llanowar Elf no matter what, you're basically always Time Walk, right? So it doesn't get nearly as much help.
Yeah, but the ability gets magnified when you're on the play, right? So
I mean,
even though I had a little bit of shoddy math on last week's episode, you're still, +1 mana ahead, and then plus X by the time you win on your turn.
Like I don't feel like so super advantaged by going like first turn Curian Ranger, my opponent goes Mox Oath. How about that? Like I don't feel real advantage from that right now. Like it's not like a lot of other decks.
Right, but that has nothing to do with tempo.
I'm just saying if you're going to leverage being first, the whole top 8, Elves is not a deck that has a magnified advantage from going first every round. More than other decks, right? Every deck wants to go first, more or less.
But I think Burn, Goblin Lackey, and Dreadnought are all decks that greatly benefit from going first in a different way.
So I thought that elves, because like Mike plays elves a lot, and is like, and he likes the deck. I think it's really powerful. And I thought that it was a deck that really gained from going first. So, but that was my range. But in that fashion, I had 5 slots devoted to elves or burn, and I like hedged it by putting in 3 hydroblasts and 2 pyroclasms versus vice versa. And the top 8 ended up being, what was it, like 3 burn decks, right? It was 3 burn decks.
But they all lost in round 1.
Yeah, 3 burn decks, a Dreadnought deck.
Life.
Yeah, black-white life. And
Ponza
then
Oath.
Yeah, 1 Ponza Oath deck. 1 land still, Tide still deck.
Blue-white Tide, yeah.
Yeah.
And then 1 Devourer deck, which was me.
All right, so
in a way, it was almost like ideal as far as like matchup possibilities.
Like, even if I had beaten Lan in the round of 8, I would have had life in the second round. So
right. So what did you play against in round 2?
I played against Jeff in round 2, and we played a combined 5 turns of Magic into 2 games.
There you go. Yeah, life is not particularly it against
against
a deck that can mill you.
Altar of Dementia, yeah.
Yeah. So, and then in the finals against Rich, he was on Oath Ponza, which is like a pretty trivial matchup also.
Right. You have 3 main decks, Sabo's Web, but like the funnier thing is that you can start the turn with 0 lands in play and then end the turn having made 5 mana. So
yeah, like against like game 1, I think I had only a Mind Stone in play, and he was just like, well, I've got this game locked up. And then he tapped out to do something, and then I just like won on the spot. And he was like, what the? So
all right. So following this, Mike tries to play Devourer at Sacred Torch. And
because you guys tricked me.
After an 0-5 performance, proceeds to say, Land says that this deck doesn't lose to decks, it only loses to cards. If Premodern becomes a competitive format, then this deck is going to like ruin the entire format. Do you agree with that statement?
Well, I do agree. I've said that a lot, that I think that like the deck doesn't lose to deck. The other decks, it just loses to cards. It loses to like Curse Totem, loses to Null Rod. It loses to Gaia's Blessing, just to some degree.
Situationally, right? Like if you go
Right.
all in, it could lose to Crows and Reclamation also in the wrong spot.
Yeah, if your opponent has like 6 mana or whatever, or whatever, right? Maybe I guess it would be 4 mana.
Yeah.
It just depends. It depends on the situation, but and then like Engineered Plague is like more difficult to play around. You just have to like play into the board, right, before they could stick their first Engineered Plague. But I do think the deck is very powerful, but it is like pretty fragile, right? Because like you're limited to basically 4 tutors unless you play Enlightened Tutor, which I don't think is great. The version I played is very lean. Like I gave up a lot of like the popular versions had like Mind Stones and Sky Diamonds. To some number, I played 2 Mind Stones, but I played 4 Mox Diamonds and 4 Lotus Petals, with the idea that you could just like be much more explosive.
Yeah, I mean, I think that this deck is like just pretty much in line with where it has been, where it's just like a very capable deck of like doing some excellent super fast kills, but also sometimes your opponent can like have the hate piece or disrupt your mana meaningfully, or
the mana disruption matters less with Lotus Petals and Mox Diamond.
Right. I mean, I agree, but like you still have to get to 5, right? And so
yeah, but like
well placed, like a deck that can like wasteland you multiple times, and like this is also a deck that just has to mulligan, right? Like if you don't have a path to combo in your opening hand, you might just be like priced into mulliganing a hand, and then obviously mana disruption gets much better if your opponent's on 6 or 5 cards.
Like I think I was playing against in game 3 against Rich, he destroyed like 3 or 4 lands of mine, and I I was not afraid at all, right? He had no pressure. He was tapping out. He's spending his entire turn to set me back one turn, and he was like selectively destroying the land that I chose to let be destroyed. Right?
Yeah, I mean, my thoughts on that was just that he should have been paying all his life into Sylvan Library looking for sphere resistance. Like, that was like the one thing that I thought was like pretty strange. He obviously has no motivation to not pay the maximum into Sylvan Library, and like, you know, that has the, you know, that kind of thing can make a difference, and that makes the mana disruption good. Like, that's why sphere is in the deck, right? So
I mean, let's say he goes and he draws. He spends 8, doesn't draw sphere of resistance. It doesn't like get him any closer, and then if he does, it's still like not very frightening to me. Right? I'm telling you from my side, right? What I was thinking, and I had sphere of resistance clearly in my calculations, and it wasn't like super frightening to me.
all right, fair enough.
So
I mean,
the way
what do you think is holding this deck back then? Like,
Well,
is it just people aren't playing it, or
the way I think about the deck is I think it's similar to the old red black reanimate deck in or black red reanimate deck in Legacy, right?
right?
Where game 1 you just have like a way better game because people are like, oh, well, you know, nothing I do meaningfully matters, like interacts other than like control decks potentially, right? But then you have defense grids and other things starting, and then game 2, no matter what, in if you're playing like the Devour side, you basically just have to bring in some number of like rushing rivers and Rings or whatever.
It's just like you have to. It's the answer to Leyline of the Void.
Yeah, and
situation,
rest in peace. You have to bring in Reverend Silence or Wear and Tear or whatever garbage, right? So you dilute the deck and you try to, you know,
one of the next two. Get one of the next two. Yeah.
I thought I thought of like an interesting card in the sideboard. I don't know if it's actually good, but I bought 4 of them just in case, which is Upheaval. For decks that are like slower, right? That have a lot of hate cards, you could just like Upheaval, and then you.
Yeah, I heard you like Rushing River. Like, allow me to introduce you to.
Yeah, because like if you can like choose your 7, right, and then they can't. They can only the only thing they can do is play 1 land on their turn.
You'll win the following turn because you'll be able to make 5 and just go.
Yeah, or you can even just win on the spot, right? If you just get rid of everything, and then your hand is like you haven't played a land yet.
Yeah.
Have like multiple diamonds or lotus petals, you know?
Yeah, it's just like diamond, soul land plus two mana.
Yeah, I mean, like, again, I don't know if this is if it's actually good, but I thought it was interesting enough to like, you know, for me to spend $5, right?
Yeah.
Upheaval's
Ridiculous.
gas.
Yeah.
It was main deck in the Stasis deck that top-aided BK's tournament.
Oh wow, BK's tournament just sounds so insane. You have Upheaval, Stasis, 4 black decks in the top 4. It's like,
Yeah, I mean, he went Upheaval against one of the black decks, and then played Black Vice, did 9, and then did 3, and then died. So it was like pretty cool, right? So he definitely just did 9 on the first turn, and then did 3, and then didn't do any more.
yeah. But it sounds like a very weird meta over there in Madison. It's like that meta, I don't think you would ever see anything similar to that on the East Coast. So.
Because we don't play Upheaval in our Stasis decks.
Well, yeah, I mean, I actually don't know what's going on. Madison used to be like, or, you know, just the Midwest area used to be maybe a little bit more poppin', and it feels like it's been a little bit quieter recently. You know, these tournaments definitely, well, I mean, they were happening quarterly, like quite regularly, and they were happening monthly at the Mana Vault in Milwaukee, and I mean, it sounds like things have kind of chilled out. I mean, I'll just like leave it to our Midwest homies to like chime in as to what's been going on there, but you know, it's been strange to see that everything is just happening in Worcester, and that's just like the deal, I guess.
They had 32 at BK's tournament. It was like not small.
No, it's a decent size, but it's like, I guess it's like, that's a good sized tournament. It's not huge, but it's like 5 full rounds. How many showed up at the Sacred Torch? Was it like
83?
7? Oh, that's a good amount.
Yeah, and then there's 110 typically at every quarterly Massachusetts.
Yeah, they sell it every
Or
time, right?
Massachusetts.
Oh,
Florida,
wow, yeah.
yeah. So it's quite a bit. I mean, it used to be that Madison was like in the news a little bit more.
Yeah.
And now it's just like there was 32 people, half the field played Mono Black and nobody played Dreadnought, which to many is like peak Premodern. But it does make it really hard for us to be like, oh, well, what am I supposed to do with this, this knowledge? But I think we tread on what Mono Black has to offer, and I think it might be interesting if Moneyball can hang on to a spot in the metagame when previously Black basically had just like zero share.
Yeah, been written off. I will say, I do like when I look at the results of a pretty large tournament, and I see decks that I just wasn't expecting to finish well, because then I'm just like, oh, what's new, or what am I missing, or what should I be learning here, right?
Yeah.
And,
Keeps things interesting.
Yeah, and it forces you to reevaluate your priors, because in this case, I was like, have I been undervaluing just like black decks all along?
Well, I mean, if somebody mind bends your Gloom, you might be in trouble.
I did buy 4 mind bends. And that's the thing too, is like, I will say, like, to Mike's point, like, there's a world where it'd be fun to show up, right, just playing like Slight Knight or something like nonsense like that. But then, like, with the league playoffs, you feel like a sort of pressure to like do well every time. I mean, I guess you should always like want to do well, but you feel like if you want to try to make the playoffs, you do feel some sort of pressure to not.
It cuts off a little bit of your urge to experiment,
to wackiness.
Yeah.
It depends how much like the fact that I hadn't played in 2 weeks and I've definitely dropped out of a top spot, right? Like that substantially impacts my decision making.
I personally think that it's just like generally going to be good, even if your plan is to like do something wacky, because like then you it just means that you have to test it a little bit more. But I think that like you can get a deck to the point where it kind of crosses the bar of like, okay, I want to take this to League Night. I'm willing to put my points on the line. And, you gain a lot of equity from having a deck that people aren't prepared for. So,
isn't like do you have to be the top spot? Isn't making top 8 just good enough?
Yeah, making top 8 is definitely good enough. I mean, Mike
says
is probably
the guy
worried
who won from 8.
Mike is probably worried that he could possibly miss.
Yeah, I'm down
he wants
like
to put
12 points or something from not playing 2 weeks.
Like, I think if I was like gonna jump from 6th to 5th place, if I like played really sweaty the last 2 weeks, or I could just like, start throwing curveballs and like putting people in like an uncomfortable spot where I might show up with Moneyball Black, and they have to worry about that going into the top 8. Like, I would prefer to do that. Right?
Yeah. What about Moneyball Green, for example?
Yeah, Moneyball Green, Elephant Ball Green.
Yeah.
But yeah, we'll see. League ends in some number of weeks, and our listeners will be sure to hear about it. Coming up, I mean, I guess some announcements. Check out Dress Crew's Twitch for LobsterCon related announcements. It's going to be on May 1st and 2nd. The signups, I believe, are going to go live on November 2nd. So mark your calendars and start figuring out your travel arrangements. It is still going to be at the Dante, so spots are going to go immediatit
wasn't it supposed to change?
It's not supposed to or not supposed to. It was just like it would be nice if it could change, but there are like a lot of like it's not like an easy thing to do, and like basically I think they need almost more than a year of planning if they were going to try to like host the old school and pre-modern championships at like a convention center or hotel ballroom in not Boston, right? So like they already can't do it in Boston. Whether or not they can do it in Pittsburgh or like a suburb of Philadelphia, which itself is
they're thinking about like changing the entire like geographic area.
Right, because you couldn't. Basically,
I didn't know that.
Yeah, we can't afford to throw a charity tournament in Boston, right? Because like it would be like 300 of us just to like probably pay the cover fee, right?
Yeah.
And then from there, you have to be like, okay, well, what are we going to do? Are we going to go to Pittsburgh? Are we going to go to like some weird place in upstate New York? Like it's like the Four Seasons landscaping. Like, what's the what are our options there? And I think the logistics are just like way too much to
figure out.
Conquer. Before it comes time for us to do LobsterCon again. And then a big thing is just that no matter what happens, the community largely feels that LobsterCon should happen every year, no matter what. So it sounds like one of the ways forward is that LobsterCon is always going to be LobsterCon, and it's just going to sell out, and it's going to be a great weekend. And then the North American Premodern Championships, which will have 500 or 700 attendees, will just have to be like done, maybe not for charity, and maybe like at a convention center. And then, maybe it wouldn't even happen because it's like too much conflict with like the ethos of Premodern. So hard to say.
If it leaves the Boston area, if it leaves New England, will it still be called LobsterCon?
Well, that's what I'm saying. It'll be called the NAPM Champs, right?
Oh, that's kind of a I was thinking like if it moved to Pittsburgh, it could be called like Steel City Con or something like that.
I mean, it could be called that. You can get in touch with the branding director over at Dress Crew.
I don't know
who is that? Is that Billy? Is that I don't know.
You'll have to tune in. You'll have to check out the pod or check out the hardcast to find out
who the branding
director is. Until then, thank you for being a listener of Spike Colony. We love you. As always, feel free to like, comment, subscribe, do all the things, engage with us on the various channels, Facebook, Discord, etc. To keep guiding our content forward. Thanks, Lan, for joining us.
Thank
Always
you for
a pleasure.
having me.
Yeah, I'm excited to have Lan. And then this next week, we'll probably have some more intimate pre-modern content because I plan on playing League this week. So
yeah, playing at least 3 rounds. Yeah,
and
hopefully I'll get back on the online grind. I've just been slammed with work, so I just like literally haven't played any matches. It's like might be the first week that I haven't played matches of pre-modern since I guess I was on vacation for 11 days.
Get on my level, Lanny.
Yeah, or exactly. You can hear about my adventures in Pauper because I've played in 2 Pauper leagues.
All right, save it for Barbarian class. Love Spike Colony.
Bye. Thanks, Lan.
Thank you.
Game over.